Good morning, LinkedIn friends, HubSpot Nation. Happy Friday. It's Pi Day, 3/14/25. Welcome to another edition of Let's Build AI Skills with Nico Lafakis, George B. Thomas, and Chris Carolan. How you fellas doing today?
I'm doing great now. I had no idea it's Pi Day. I had no idea it's Pi Day. After this, I guess I have to run out to my local grocery store because I got to get some sweet potato pie. We got to have some sweet potato pie on Pi Day. I'm just going to throw that out there. But I'm doing great. How about you guys?
Doing good. Did not realize it was Pi Day myself. Not much into the mathematics, so that shouldn't surprise anybody.
And how was I reminded that it was Pi Day?
Yeah,
Did Pi remind you?
A text from the pizza place yesterday.
Oh,
because they send out
good marketing, I
discount code or whatever, right? Pizza pies.
Yeah,
that smells like it might taste good.
So welcome in. It's been another interesting week. I'm figuring out how to convince you guys to go daily again, because as I put the message in this morning, it's like, okay, yeah, we're gonna talk about this, right? Or
I'm sorry, I'm back. I heard daily, and all of a sudden my brain checked out. I was like, wait.
Meanwhile, behind the scenes, folks, George is definitely building an infrastructure which is going to allow him to do this daily, but we'll get there. So I think what we've talked about is Nico's been doing some vibe coding, I guess it's called now. Vibe is like a word that I saw it in a post from I think Darmas at the beginning of this week, and now all of a sudden I'm seeing it everywhere.
Everywhere, bro.
So
I'm like, what is this thing? So
and the funny thing is like when I read it, like I was all about it because that's literally the reason why I use Claude instead of GPT. The vibe that I get from working with it is different from the vibe that I get working with GPT, right? But in this case, it's tell us what vibe coding actually is first.
I go to house music, just so everybody knows. I'm like, like when I'm like, oh, that's not what it is. Oh, so Nico, do tell.
So yeah, vibe coding is with new technology and new era comes all new slang and all new acronyms and catchphrases and all that. So we've already bastardized agent. Might as well do it with vibe as well, right? So vibe coding is, I'm not really sure why it's called that, to be honest with you. It should just be called like copilot coding or something like that, assistant coding. It's the expression that's used for when you are using a generative coding app, like full stack development app. So as opposed to like Claude Code or just using GPT or just using Cursor, where you're doing some of it, it's finishing some of it, you're making suggestions, and then it's making suggestions, and it might make like a full edit. Vibe coding is more like, hey, build this app, and then you go get a cup of coffee and you come back and inspect your app and make sure that it's working properly. It's the latest wave, right? Like, so there's been, I mean, obviously in the last 2 years, there's been this, like the biggest amount of talk about like, well, what's going to happen to programmers, developers, like what happens to that whole field and them peoples. And I was thinking about it yesterday, and it all just is starting to click and make sense now. It's just that everything turns into an artistic mode. And that's why you see great lifts of productivity in areas where people don't normally use the tool. So when you see all these graphs and they're showing that people who don't normally do coding have this like 70, 80, 85% lift in like capability and productivity, but you only see like a 10 to 15% lift for people who are already like entrenched knee deep in it. It's because the other people finally have a means of expression. They finally have a means to get the thing in their head out of their head. And they can do it like verbally. They can just type it out and they can just, I want this app.
Yeah.
And here we go.
See,
and
this excites me.
It caught me completely off guard. Like Dario Amodei had was in an interview. I think it was for Bloomberg this past week at a conference, and said the weirdest thing to me, because he said that he didn't think that it was there just yet, and he thought that developers were like still very much needed to be in the loop, because he thought that, you know, suggestions for better methods of doing things or security or something like that was still a necessity. And I turned to my wife and immediately showed her the Lovable I was working on, where I was partnering GPT with Lovable, and as Lovable was building out the application, I would tell GPT where we were at in the process. And once we got towards the end, GPT was like, hey, would you like to start working on the authentication and security methods? And I was like, yeah, give me the directions. I'll give them to my developer and they'll go ahead and start facilitating it. So it blew me. Like I really don't stop too often during his videos. And I had to like just stop. It took me a minute. It took me a good minute. I turned around and was telling my wife about it. Like it really just kind of took me back, because it's like, do the creators not realize what's being created with their own creations already?
Oh.
Right? Like, yeah. Has he used any of these tools to sort of understand? Like, I get it. You can't, don't get me wrong. You can't build out a full-blown like full hardcore application in one shot. You can't just, hey, build me out a replica of Adobe Photoshop. That's not going to happen in one shot, right? Even if it did, it would probably, as if this was the challenge, it might cost you $50. So like, that's the other aspect of this, is like, not yet, but by the end of this year. So like, don't kid yourselves. Like by the end of this, even Zucks has said by the end of this year, he's replacing full stack devs. And why not, right? So like, there's this whole crushing feeling of like, well, now coding doesn't mean anything, or like the ability to code doesn't mean anything. And it's like, yeah, but you were gating all of the possibilities of these applications by knowledge, right? There's this gigantic gate of knowledge, certifications, and all this kind of stuff that you would need, and SQL certifications, and all my PHP and all this stuff. Who has the time to learn all of that in order to build all of these useful applications that we could be using on a daily basis? And I don't know what they are, because I have different use cases than you do, than everybody else does. But that's the whole point, is that you could actually build that application. And what have we been talking about this whole time? That niche is where it's at. I've been talking to the models all week, and they have all come back with the same thing. Hey, if you build a niche application for this, there's actually a huge market for it. Of course, because 99 cents times 50,000 people is $50,000. It can be as niche as you want. There are 300 million people in this country with smartphones, at least 3 billion. So whatever the niche is, you're probably hitting at minimum 1 million users. Go look at your average app actually on the App Store, and most of them are 50K and 100K, like at minimum. For like the dumbest, like 2-star rated app, right? Even some of the like crap 1-star rated apps still have like 10K downloads and stuff on 99-cent apps, right? So like, that's like, everybody was wondering, like, how are we going to get into this new era? How are people going to make money? What happens to jobs? Like, what does the economy look like? This, that, or the other. And, we've got all these forecasts from McKinsey about, the economy is going to grow by trillions of dollars by 2030. But what does that look like? NVIDIA is going to be at a market cap of like 8 to 10 trillion. How does that happen? This is it. It's this new digital economy. It's this whole new digital facilitation, right? Our lives are kind of transcending and moving in this direction. And in that sense, and with more people sort of joining the grid, so to speak, there's going to be greater need for people to have these applications that facilitate some aspect of their daily lives. But programmers are never going to have enough time. We don't have enough companies, but we do have enough people, and we have this generative means of developing software. So problem solved. Crowdsourced software.
Have some thoughts, but I'd love to hear George first.
Well, I'm sitting here and I'm like, I'm not a coder. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do some nerdy stuff with some HTML and some CSS, and like I can be pretty wicked when it comes to the HubSpot CMS and some of the stuff that we do there as far as like, but I also have somebody who backs me up a little bit on this. But I'm literally sitting here listening to Nico and I'm like, I really wonder how easy it would be to turn my human helper into a mobile app to then put into like the stores and allow people just to download the app and use it on their devices. And I'm like, in history, there's never a time that my mind would have gone there without the expectation to pay 10, 15, 20, $30,000. But I'm like, wait, like if I just take a weekend or a couple weeks maybe, but if I just take some time and a few dollars, could I be creative and could I give birth? Because I love the birthing things. That's why I love website design so much. Like something from nothing. And so I like literally as I'm listening to Nico, I'm like, man, how many nothings to somethings are in me? How many nothing to somethings are in the people who are watching this? Like how many great ideas won't die in the grave of the humans that are watching this recording because we're entering a level of curiosity plus creativity equals cash flow. Ooh, somebody tweet that shit.
I love you guys, and
oh my god,
I love this concept that we could build anything for anybody at any time, but so much of it is about the products like themselves and the ability to build them. And I'm just gonna share my screen real quick because as I asked Nico, I was like, why haven't I asked Perplexity this question yet? Like, and a couple things I want to take away here from its answer, right? I said, are you familiar with the term vibe coding? Right. This concept was introduced by Andre Karpathy, a co-founder of OpenAI and former AI leader at Tesla, in February 2025.
Dang.
Last month.
Yeah.
Right. And we see videos and so first of all, the speed. Right. Mm-hmm. This is an example of the speed of innovation.
Which is funny, right? Because how long ago did we start using Replit?
Right.
So, and what was I just saying? That like the guys creating Frankenstein don't even really realize how like where people are at with their Frankenstein creation, right? Like,
well,
Replit was out before he even like. What's up?
That doesn't surprise me though.
Wait, hold on. I think like
go ahead.
They know exactly what they're doing, and I think it's this term can shed some light on it, because what I'm like putting it up against is yesterday's. Like there was a developer hug, right?
Mhm.
The elephant in the IDE, right? And a Replit was on doing a demo, right? So vibe coding, like, is in my lay brain is replacing IDE. Like, surprise, IDE was not getting the job done in terms of communicating the value of this thing, right?
Mhm.
So allows developers to focus on the intent of the software rather than writing code manually. So if you can take a
Complexity.
step back
Yeah.
and just think about the word vibe, it's literally you vibe something into existence, right? It's you can now feel the product into being,
Right.
right? Is how I'm reading this. And does that make it more attractive to me and help me understand, like, you're basically just going with the flow and you end up with a product. And if you approach it from that direction, products will be better. The problem I have is, as you guys mentioned, building apps and building stuff, getting to adoption and usage. Nobody's talking about that gap, right? Because
Mhm.
even when Bill Barlas in an afternoon creates my dream, like, and shows it to me, which is an LLM chat based interface that is an order portal that I can ask anything about the deals or orders or anything I've done with you, and it can go grab it from HubSpot. I know for a fact that our challenge is the education and adoption. So I am not interested at all in trying to create a product with it, because it's like we are just overloaded with products and solutions and tools. And like, if I could help people understand, like, the value of accessing a George clone versus all the other things that they're doing right now, like, we've got to figure out how to close that gap. And that's why I'm so bullish on things like Alexa Plus, where it's already everywhere. And that's also why these companies have these edges. There's already a bunch of Google phones in the market, right? There's already a bunch of people on these social networks and using HubSpot, using Salesforce, using all these tools, right? So like, how do you fit into that, right? And that's why we do shows like this, because like, until the mindset shifts, like, if you're not building a product that's like already right next to them as they live their life, like, you have to get pretty lucky to get them to move far enough from what they're already doing. And it's just, I think I just don't hear it, in a lot of what's coming to be, or especially around, like, I did like the word citizen developer yesterday, the phrase that I learned on the DHug.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, they're putting these tools in the hands of the citizens, right? But do they know what the hell to do with it? Like, and I think, like, when you, like, the double-edged sword, as I'm just thinking out loud, when you feel the thing into existence, and then somebody's like, "Oh yeah, like, that sounds cool. What is it going to do for me?" Like, you can't feel the communication over to them that's required to, like, help them get it, right? It's all clear inside your head about what it's supposed to be doing, what the value prop is, the problems that it solves. So you end up with a product that makes so much sense for you, and it like kills you that you can't just get it in the hands of like everybody around you as soon as possible, because it's just immense value. But
Right.
like, how do we turn that value into like realized, value, right? And that's where I think, like, to put a to end this point, I think they know that as humans, we want to do stuff like that, right? But there's so many gaps in the process of actually creating value in people's lives every day that they're creating the space for this stuff to happen. And knowing that AI itself has to solve for some of these gaps, but we can't possibly understand exactly where. And I think that's what we're seeing come to pass right now.
See, and I think, like, listen, I think some of what's happening here is a little bit semantics. I think, Chris, you're right that they know what they're building. And Nico, I think you're right. They have no idea what we're building. Like, you see what I'm saying there? Like, they know what they're building. They know the road that they're traveling, but like any creator, they have no clue what's going to happen. Like, and this is the beginning of time, the Garden of Eden. If you look at Brian Halligan and Dharmesh, do they use HubSpot like we use HubSpot? And I'm not correlating Brian and Dharmesh to God, so don't hate mail me or anything like. I'm just saying the creators never know what the creation is gonna do.
That's true.
Never. There's too many roads. There's too many Avenger timelines. There's like. So
well, I guess
gotta be the
like
creator
the way I was
create, right? And try to create the best you can. And then you kind of have to see what happens on the other side.
right. I guess I was just more like blown away that he hadn't heard about it yet.
Oh,
Or that somebody hadn't said like, hey, did you see this thing that like somebody created using, Claude as the underlying model or whatever?
I can, you know how crazy it must be in these organizations? Like, I know
I'm
my
sure it's
little
insane.
tiny flea on the dog's butt agency, how fast-paced moving we are, and the amount of stuff that I have no clue that it's happening in a day. Whew, I can only imagine what their day looks like. But yeah, it's
And like
there's
the only way I think you could stay sane, which is probably why it makes so much sense to me, is you just turn that part off. Like, I do not need to know these things. As long as I create this, as long as I create in the way that we all agreed to, that the entire organization is aligned on. This is why we always come back to like culture and values and North Star. And like at some point, you just build this amazing organization and team built with amazing individuals. And then you've got to trust that the output is going to be something that you're proud of and something that creates value. But you don't know what that's going to look like, right? And yeah, like how could you stay sane? Like, I mean, we see people go insane all the time by like, no, you can't be worried about all that stuff. You can't micromanage all over the place like that. You can't, it's antithesis to what you're trying to accomplish in a lot of ways, right? So that's where it's I would anticipate like that they're like, oh yeah, that's cool. I hadn't heard that yet, but it's within this huge realm of possibility that I'm allowing myself to believe. Like, uh, yeah, that makes sense. That could happen.
The other
Right?
thing too, where my brain's going is because I think about Nico like months ago when we were doing this thing daily, and it was like the rate in which we're getting things to the rate in which they were actually being made. I just remember that conversation, and like maybe they did know, by the way, but like when you have like 2 or 3 year down the road, like cooler stuff. I want to swear there. I think it would make more impact if I said the S word, but cooler stuff. Like I can imagine also where a human would be like, oh yeah, that's cute. All right, let's go back to what we're building that's going to be launched in 2 years from now, because oh my god, like, so there's maybe even a level of that, of like, it's hard to be impressed by what we're doing based on what they're creating to give us the thing that we're actually doing. Anyway, I hope that made sense.
It kind of does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I wanted to just kind of show people like what I know we have shown people what operator looks like, but I just wanted to show people what the vibe coders look like, and what it is that we're talking about, right? So let me jump over here. And so what I did is I started out with Claude, just using it to develop a blueprint for an application for a web app. And so it's gone ahead and done that. So I'm literally just going to copy paste this over to these two applications. I think Replit can handle. Yep. Okay. So with Replit, you can just sort of paste the whole thing in there. But what I want to do is kind of keep off the deliverables aspect of this. Yep. Okay. So I'm just going to take them as is and shove them in here. And then say, hey, can please started on building this website as outlined, attached documentation. Okay, and then I'm just going to do the same thing here, except I'm just going to put private that. Okay, Lovable is faster than Replit for sure. I've been messing with these for the last week. Replit is really nice, but they both do the same thing. Replit kind of shows you the process a little bit better than Lovable, so I'll stick with. Oh, actually, you can't see. So you could. This is why it's like considered vibe coding, right? Is like I'm not going to write anything. I'm just going to sit back and let it do what it does. And so Replit works very much like an agent, where it just comes back and it's like, hey, so do we want to just build what you got laid out, or do you want to actually start involving those more complicated things? 10 out of 10 times, I just start from, let's just start at the beginning and then we'll go from there, because otherwise it kind of just tries to go a little bit overboard. So, and then you can see here, you'll be able to visually see it. It'll do a screenshot within 2 minutes, and then the first app should be done within 10. I think it's actually a lot faster than that. It doesn't give itself enough credit. All right, so Lovable is still going at it. It is a full website with a lot of functionality, so let's not joke about it. All right, so the agent is working, and you'll see over here, any packages, whatever it might need to install in order to get this site up and running, it's going to go ahead and do that. It's not going to, see, it's 2 minutes. We've got it in less than a minute. We've already got something populating. Lovable still going at it. I can guarantee you the difference in the two is that Lovable is probably going to, see, so it's even telling you, I'm going to use this design inspiration. Here's the features I'm going to build out. Here's the design elements we're going to go with.
I think the thing that everybody underestimates, it's not just, I would imagine, it's not just the human vibes anymore, like directing, like when we're working with these tools. That's why I'd say collaborating, right? Like you get vibes back from the AI, like, and that you can lean into. So how many times you've been working on a project and you get some just amazing feedback, and it was like, oh, I wish it could do this. And you're just like, wow, that would be amazing. I have no idea how I'm going to get that done.
Right.
Or that just added $20,000 like to the project. So no, I can't do that super awesome idea that we both really want to do right now. That now you can lean into that vibe. Like, obviously I like the vibe. We're a little too much maybe, but I love it when they find words like this. Like when I describe HubSpot to people, like if you just take a step back and understand the words grow better, like, and just believe that everything about those words is what the product and the ecosystem represents, that's why you invest the money in this stuff. So you can understand these simple words and not, run them through the mill and bastardize them like we tend to do, right? That's the value. Doesn't have to be rocket science. It's doing the rocket science for you.
Right. And that's so like that. This is exactly what I was speaking to earlier, which is that like, I don't need to, I don't know why. So like, I know what coders are saying now and what developers are saying now, but this is not an insult to you guys. It really isn't. It's just that I really do believe that you haven't gotten out there and you haven't used this stuff and you really don't know the speed at which this stuff is accelerating. Beginning of last year, we had manual coding transitioning into like Code Helper. Sort of by the end of the first quarter of last year, we had Code Helper with like Cody and what do you call it? Cursor, right? Probably a couple months after that, nearly every coding software had Copilot capability where you could pull your GPT or pull your Claude into it. Couple months after that, Replit drops with a generative engine. I was using it during inbound, right? And so now we're a couple months later and I'm building out full stack applications. Don't tell me that by the end of this year, it won't be able to be a 100% perfect code writing full stack developer. So at that point, no, I'm not going to need it from the end of 25 forward. No one is going to have to need to know how to code for any particular reason.
Here's the point to that. There's a key word in that. Need to.
Right.
Some of us aren't going to want to. There is always going to be that side of it. Like, and by the way, I'm not speaking fully to myself. I'm speaking to myself as maybe other humans. Like, we might look at this and go, that's great that I could. And now I have to think of the should. And what else do I want to do in my day? Nope. Let me go ahead and still pay somebody to do that, even if I know they're going to use these tools to streamline their day and be able to golf more or spend more time with their wife and kids or husband or whoever it may be.
Yeah. And this is also why we've moved our Singularity Soothsayer show to Sundays, so we can go as long as we need to go. We need to wrap this today, fellas. I guarantee we will come back to this. I mean, literally, just built a app, like it's visually done. You can see it happening as it's doing it. Like,
and you can see that there's like some bugs and stuff, right? But that's the whole point. Right. Is I can just go back to Lovable. I can even take a screenshot of this, go back to Lovable, and be like, "Hey, I need a way to collapse the menu." Okay, boom, and it'll go and fix that, right? Like you can troubleshoot everything that you need to, right? So like, what's next? Refine and customize. But yeah,
man,
this is what I meant when I said Lovable's faster, right? Like Replit is chugging away, but it can't beat it in terms of the speed.
What a great time to be alive.
Indeed. Enjoy the abundance, folks. Find a way.
And like at the end of the day, it's like, okay, what's the cost of what I'm doing right now? Come on.
Not a lot.
Nothing. Because I just signed up.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So
zero cost.
We usually come back to this all the time. The AI skill right now is use AI. Like start playing, start learning, there is no excuse at this point. And if you need help finding a way to value and why it fits into your life and how, like, that's what we want to help with. So don't hesitate to reach out. We're happy to help you build out that mindset and help you find that opportunity and grow. Have a great weekend, everybody.